Hey guys, good morning. Happy Thursday. Hope you're off to a good day so far. If you saw Coffee Talk yesterday, you'll know that there was a certain amount of insanity happening on a regular basis, so I am cheating today. And my children are happily eating cereal and watching Curious George, which is exactly what I should have done yesterday. My husband was watching, he's traveling, and he was watching our live, and he said, that was crazy. I was like, welcome to my world, like my world. By the way, I'm also out of tea today, but I just want to mention, speaking of my husband, he works for this company Echelon Front, which teaches leadership. And that's like a kind of a broad overview, but my husband and his business partner, Jocko Willink, wrote this book called Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership. They're two different books talking about how to be a good leader. And one of the things they do is travel around the country and work with different companies on different, leadership tips and tactics, if you will. But Jocko put together this tea. Let me show. So I'm drinking tea these mornings because I'm pregnant, and my heart races when I drink too much coffee. But one of the benefits of this tea is that you get like this little good affirmation, which I appreciate every day. And this is Jocko's white tea, which he drinks in the morning. And no, I'm not going to change this to tea talk because it doesn't. It's good. There's the kids. And honestly, I enjoy a little coffee in the morning, which I usually have with you guys, but I can't right now. It's just like I have enough adrenaline in my life, right? How about you guys? Okay, a couple news items just to get to today, and I'm curious about your thoughts on a few stories. I want you to weigh in on whether or not we should chase today. So, first things first, let me start with kind of a fun story because there's a lot of other heavy news. I was taking a look. A lot of you might be on spring break. Are you on spring break now? And Miami Beach, Florida is having a really tough spring break. I mean, when I think about spring break, I could kind of think about the Jersey Shore television show, kind of like that. Well, in Miami Beach, it's like really bad. They've had all sorts of incidents from, fights to a girl hanging out the side of her car window and ending up getting run over when she fell out. I mean, like crazy things that you couldn't even imagine. And there was an emergency meeting held this week about what to do about spring break in Miami. And apparently one of the solutions is just to make it less fun. So I don't know if that's going to work, but I thought that was kind of an interesting story from around the country about trying to eliminate spring break. Interesting to note, though, officials in the area said most of the people, or the majority of the people being arrested, were actually locals to the area, so not people coming in to travel for spring break. So if any of you are getting crazy in Miami, word to the wise, they're cracking down. For the rest of us who are not getting crazy and watching Curious George, a couple other stories I think you should know about today. One, just have a big domestic story. There's a lot of talk about the U.S. economy. I'm sure you've seen some of the headlines about the economy slowing down. There's a variety of different data that suggests different things about the economy right now. So I wouldn't go so far as to say, oh yeah, the U.S. economy is slowing down. Although the Fed chairman yesterday, who's the head of the central bank, said that there are signs of a slowing. One of the things that came out yesterday that has a big effect on your life is that the Fed said that they're not looking to raise interest rates. They don't say it directly. They always hint at these things. But they're hinting that they're not going to raise interest rates again for the rest of the year. So interest rates will remain pretty stable. That has a lot of effects, whether you're getting a car loan, home equity line of credit. Some of your credit cards are tied to this. So I just wanted to flag that for you because it's something that could kind of fly under the radar. But the Fed is doing that. The Fed is on the one hand saying, hey, the economy is looking pretty good. We're seeing some signs of slowing. We want to wait and see more data on that. This is how we're feeling about things. So we're keeping the interest rate steady. One of the reasons why I was watching that is that there was concern from some investors that, if the economy is indeed slowing and you start raising interest rates too fast, it could be a bad thing for the overall economy. One thing that the data doesn't include is just how people feel. And I'm curious how you feel about the U.S. economy. It's a big part of what I've covered, the financial crisis. There's nothing that you can do to quantify it, but the way people feel when they're going out shopping or they're looking at things for their houses or they're doing things, that really has a big effect on the economy too. So here's the two big stories today that are really coming out. both out of New Zealand. One is one that we're looking at that's a little bit more original content, and the other is a headline that I'm sure you've likely seen already this morning, that the New Zealand Prime Minister announced a sales ban on certain types of weapons in New Zealand. This is a sales ban that's in effect immediately as a way to keep people from stockpiling on weapons in New Zealand that are the similar type of weapons to the ones that were used in the New Zealand mosque shooting less than a week ago. So it doesn't apply to all guns in New Zealand, but a certain type of guns. You're going to hear the term military style weapon. It's a term that we're not going to use on the website. You know, I think there's some debate about using that term. What's a military style weapon, which is not, and that can become a very political term. So it's a semi-automatic rifle that they're looking to ban in particular, and an extra magazine that, or being able to purchase extra magazines, which would allow you to carry more rounds in the gun. I am a new gun owner. In fact, I never shot a gun ever in my life until I was in my early 30s. So oftentimes,
I need to show you how to shoot the gun.
Oh, like trace
I need to show you how to squeeze off.
Thank you. My 4-year-old is telling me that he's going to teach me how to shoot the gun. But here's the reality:
I'm
is
gonna
that
teach you with my 22 long rifle.
you're going to teach me on your 22 long rifle. Cool.
You just can't jerk the trigger.
You can't jerk the trigger. I mean, these are all good tips. These are tips, though. Actually, this is a good learning. There's a reason for even mentioning this. You know, one of the things you start seeing in stories about weapons and gun bans and sales is mistakes that were repeatedly made in the press, because the majority of the press, you know, that's centered in New York City, in America, legally can't own guns in New York City. And many of them haven't used guns. It's been a big education for me as a journalist to learn how to shoot a gun and learn about the terminology. And one of the things that we teach our children, because my husband obviously knows how to use guns. He grew up in Texas. He's a hunter, teaching our children gun safety from the beginning. Trace, my 4-year-old, is not going to teach me how to shoot a gun, but I bet he knows some things that I never did, even now, about it. And it's important to teach gun safety. That's a side note. That neither makes me an advocate for gun ownership or not an advocate for gun ownership. It's just part of the education process. And even this morning, it's okay. I'll help you. You still? We have a milk bath happening over here. People pay big money for that, Liberty. Here, come here. Let me wipe you off. Here. You're not supposed to wear the Cheerios. Okay, better? Okay. But getting back to that, I just want, as you see this story continue to grow out of New Zealand, there's going to be questions about, well, why doesn't the United States do this? And we can dig deeper into that if you'd like to. New Zealand is a country of about 5 million people, so you have to think about that. I think we talked about it earlier this week or even last week. That's about half the size of all of New York City. The gun ownership in the area, they estimated about 1 million, which would be a quarter of the population. So I want to check that stat. It's either 1 million guns or 1 million. Just know that we're dealing with a country that is far smaller than the United States of America. And the difference of regionalism and how people feel about their guns, how they're using their guns, urban versus rural, north versus south. I mean, you have so many different diversity of opinions in the United States, which is part of the reason that it's been challenging to think about a national law for guns. So we can look into that more if you'd like to, about, you know, hey, there's this ban happening in New Zealand. Could it actually happen in America? I'm happy to look at that and kind of compare and contrast the situations because they are very different. But New Zealand is banning the sale of these weapons immediately. And then what they said they're going to do is ban them altogether. So you're not going to be able to actually own one. Again, they did the sales ban so that if someone wanted to go out and own these guns, that they could not go and do that. You know, you can't go buy 3 or 4 or 5 weapons if you wanted to do that. Hey, there's a big question about how this is going to be applied. You know, if someone has a gun, is there a registry for the government, a national registry in New Zealand that knows that someone can come knocking on their door for a gun? We don't have a national registry in America for very specific reasons. So it's challenging, is what I'm saying. the headlines are going to look like, and you're going to see people saying, oh, New Zealand is, is taking action. Well, let's see how it's actually applied. But that is the news of the day, one of the big headlines of the day. So curious what you guys think about that. Second thing that we took a look at is, I don't know if you guys remember this, a couple months ago, we did a Coffee Talk Live, and I was banned from YouTube. I know. Me. I can't even believe it. I had a brief moment of fame for being banned. Part of the reason we were banned is we were talking about terrorism during that coffee talk. I don't know why we were banned. I don't know why we were not allowed to post. I should rephrase that. I think it was because we were talking about terrorism. But they never told us. There was no explanation. And eventually they allowed us to go back on and apologize. Thank you, YouTube. I was taking a look at social media because the video from the New Zealand attack continues to be available online in different forms. And I thought, why is it so hard? Social media companies can eliminate us in a second, like we don't even exist. And there's there's very little what we can do. But then if there's content on there that's difficult, why is it so difficult to remove? And so couple, I'm just going to paint in kind of big generalizations here. It's simply because of the number of users, very little oversight, that's human oversight. So they're using these algorithms and artificial intelligence, and even things like how a video is shot can impact whether or not it can be swept up in a dragnet trying to get rid of it. One of the problems apparently with the New Zealand video is twofold. One, it was live. So live stream like this, how is Instagram gonna, I guess Instagram could jump in and cut our feed maybe, but they're not seeing the content that I'm doing live unless they're watching. And so some think that live streaming for social media should be banned. It should not be allowed because it can't be monitored. But you have free speech advocates that say, no way, are you kidding? This is part of the tool of the public now. And you can't do that. So it's a very interesting, I think, conversation and area that we're in. We talked a couple weeks ago about customer service. If you can't get on your Instagram account, how do you get back on? It's very difficult for an individual to interact with these companies. And at the same time, now there's a big question about the government and these companies as well. We didn't get to it in the card stack. But some of the things that were being done in New Zealand is that telecom companies and even the government in some cases was and look, according to the report in the Wall Street Journal, it was a telecom company like Vodafone wasn't allowing access to a certain URL, so a certain internet address. So they could just, let's say AT&T decided, hey, SmartHER News, you're sharing a video we don't like. We're just not going to allow any AT&T users to access the URL of SmartHER News. You're getting into this area of like who controls what and who has access to what. And it's a very interesting debate. This is not to say, hey, people should have access to the New Zealand shooter video, but here the video has been shared, it's been edited. Some people have put music to it. If someone has isolated 20 seconds, how does that social media company find that 20 seconds? Does it live on the web forever? It's an interesting world we're in, and a scary world even for parents. I was thinking about this. Even for parents, we already know it, but once something is on social media, that's the problem. It's not the blocking it getting on. That's a whole other conversation. Blocking it getting on will prohibit it from going further. But when something's on the web, as we know, it's like, 1,000 grains of sand. How do you find it all? So we took a closer look at that today. So I'm curious what you think on that quick story. Finally, just real quick, in my hometown of San Francisco, there's a new gym that says that it's the only virtual reality gym in the entire world. And what you would do is you would go and you put on this like big headgear, and you do exercises that make you feel like you're in some sort of a game, a 30-minute exercise, and you like win points by doing, look at me, like by doing this. Yeah, it's going to be great. And they think that's the next wave of exercise, to get people feeling like they're actually in a video game in virtual reality. Would that work for you? So on the one hand, you have technology that's presenting all these challenges, and then others that say technology is going to solve some of our problems, like putting us in a virtual reality game. I don't know, you guys. I don't know. I'm a huge fan of my Peloton. I really love the Peloton. So that's on-demand exercise. I don't know how I feel about being like, although maybe being in, like, they call it the black box. That's what they call it. That's the name of the gym. I don't know. Maybe it would be kind of an escape. Anyhow, that's just some of the stories that are happening today, guys. Hope you have a good one, and let us know if you'd like us to dig further into either the gun ban that's taking place in New Zealand or any other story that you see. We always like to hear from you. In the meantime,